Hello, you're watching the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of May 25, 2025. A large number of events have taken place today, so let's get started. We begin with the Sumy region, in the Sumy direction, where, according to various sources, the Russian Federation continues its offensive. At the moment, the key settlement in this sector of the front is the village of Unakivka. The village of Unakivka once served as a crucial stronghold and the most important village during the Sudzha offensive operation, and later during the Sudzha defensive operation for the Ukrainian Armed Forces, AFU. It was from Unakivka that the Ukrainian side supported and supplied the AFU group located in the Kursk region. Now we can see that the Russian army has gradually advanced right up to the village itself. This information has already been confirmed by both pro-Russian and neutral cartographers. And today, for the first time since the beginning of hostilities, even the pro-Ukrainian cartographers from Deep State have updated their maps to reflect this. They have now colored the entire northern part north of Unakivka, including settlements such as Novenka, Zhuravka, Veselovka, and Basovka, as being under the control of the Russian Federation, thereby confirming the presence of Russian units. However, settlements like Lokhnya and Belovody are still marked by Ukrainian sources as being in the grey zone or under the fog of war, even though we have repeatedly received geolocated footage confirming further Russian advances to the south. Currently, experts are trying to determine how exactly the Russian army plans to continue its advance. But there is general agreement that the main strike will most likely come from Belovody to the south, toward Yablunivka, and further toward the H07 highway. The goal appears to be to establish full, possibly physical, control over the H07 road and prevent Ukrainian forces from supplying the group in Unakivka. This would lead to a semi-encirclement or even operational encirclement, aimed at pushing Ukrainian units out of Unakivka southward into the large forested areas that surround the settlement of Sumy. Next, we move on to the Kharkiv sector of the front. Over the past few days, this area has repeatedly appeared in reports. As a reminder, the northern part of Vauvchansk has already been almost completely cleared. And if we analyze the situation as a whole, there's a very high probability that the northern part of Vauvchansk has long been under Russian control. Some small isolated pockets of resistance may still exist, but they are being gradually eliminated. We are increasingly seeing objective control footage from the southern part of Vauvchansk. There are strikes from Stupotchki flamethrower systems, Russian FPV drones targeting Ukrainian logistics, equipment, personnel movements, FPV drone operator positions, and their subsequent destruction, as well as strikes on Ukrainian bridges and supply lines. In this footage, we can see another bridge over the Vovcha River that was destroyed by a Kh-38 missile strike. Overall, it appears that southern Vauvchansk is being prepared to receive Russian troops. It's difficult to say exactly when this operation will begin, but it seems that the main phase of the offensive will start once the Russian Federation presents its formal proposal and Ukraine is expected to immediately reject it. That's when the much-discussed summer offensive will likely begin. Now we move to the Kupansk sector of the front, starting with the Lyman direction. Fighting continues here, and the situation around the Zarechny-Torske area remains unclear. Today this topic is receiving a lot of attention. A few days ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced the complete clearing of Torske. Following this, many cartographers, mostly pro-Russian and some neutral, updated their maps based on the ministry's report. However, later reports from various sources indicated that there were no Russian troops in Torske. It's hard to say what's really happening. Some update maps, others don't. Some cartographers are even arguing about this. For now, we're keeping the map in its current form on your screen, while we wait for more geolocation data. One thing worth noting is that regardless of who currently controls the settlement of Torske, there are no longer any new objective control videos coming from there. There are no FAB strikes, no LMUR strikes, no drone attacks, and that's probably not a coincidence. Most likely, the focus has now shifted to Zarechny, where Russian troops stationed in Torske may be redeploying. We'll keep watching. That's all we can say for now on this front. Next, we move to the Siversk sector of the front. Here, the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces around Kryhorivka, Serebryanka, and Siversk itself continue to be targeted. Russian drones are working to identify Ukrainian FPV operator positions. Strikes are being conducted on supply depots and temporary deployment points. And of course, there are continued strikes on the Siversk citadel, the area of high-rise buildings on the eastern outskirts of the town. It is precisely that outskirts, which logically is the direction where Russian units are expected to launch an offensive, possibly in the near future. However, considering that this area has high-rise buildings, it's like a smaller version of Vuhledar in the northeastern part of Siversk. Therefore, it's highly likely that Russian forces will not rush into a frontal assault on Siversk. Next, we move on to the most critical section of the front, the Konstantinivka direction. Today, there are many important geolocations and a lot of significant updates from this area. Let's start with the main route, the logistical line connecting the settlements of Pokrovsk, Druzhkivka, and Alexeyevo-Druzhkivka. In this footage, we can observe how, during reconnaissance activities, Russian forces identified Ukrainian armed forces UAF positions. A strike was then carried out on these positions in the northern part of Druzhkivka, using the Tornado S system, likely with a cluster munition payload. These are the exact locations targeted by the strikes. Let me remind you that this is the main road heading south towards Pokrovsk. This road connects the two major agglomerations. The outcome of the general battle expected in this section of the front will likely depend on how effectively Russian forces can take control of these supply routes. As for the Toretsk-Konstantinivka line, there's been a large number of geolocated strikes. Russian drones are actively working here, identifying enemy positions, destroying equipment, delivering ammunition, and monitoring troop rotations by the UAF. All of this is the standard preparatory work typically done before launching a new offensive. Rotations are being disrupted, depots destroyed, FPV drone operator hubs taken out, and vehicles eliminated, all in an effort to prevent the Ukrainians from consolidating their presence in this area. It's difficult to say exactly when the offensive in this pocket will begin, but it's possible it won't start until Russian troops enter the settlement of Predtekine. According to current information, that's where the main fighting is taking place. Recently, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported the clearing of the village of Stupotchki. However, some pro-Russian analysts were quick to state that this information was not accurate. It's hard to say definitively. For now, we'll treat Stupotchki as still contested. However, footage has started to emerge from Predtekine. Ukrainian forces are trying to move equipment into the area from the direction of Konstantinivka, but the entrance to Predtekine is under FPV drone surveillance, and all incoming vehicles are being destroyed. If Russian forces manage to break through along the Stupotchki-Predtekine line and enter the settlement, then the pocket from Stupotchki-Predtekine southward to Toretsk along the Siversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal will effectively collapse. Not immediately, but it will only be a matter of time. Now let's move to the Klebenbeek pocket. As you can see, the map has changed significantly. We'll start with the settlement of Romanivka. Early this morning, pro-Ukrainian sources from the 44th Mechanized Brigade published these drone footage clips. In them, we see Ukrainian soldiers repelling wave after wave of Russian assaults and strikes being delivered on positions and storage areas. The video is 2.5 minutes long, and 3 geolocated strike points were identified. One Ukrainian drone strike hit here, another struck the northern part of Romanivka, and a third hit the central part of the village of Zaria. Based on this footage, significant map changes were made. First, Romanivka was fully marked as under Russian control. Later, the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that units from the south grouping had completely cleared the village. Based on both the MOD report and the video footage published by Ukraine's 44th Mechanized Brigade, we updated the map to reflect Russian control over Romanivka. Previously, this area was considered a grey zone due to conflicting reports from various sources. From the central part of Zaria, we marked the map from Oleksandropil northward along the tree lines to the central area. This confirms that the fighting has moved from the southern part of the pocket and fields to the northern outskirts. Russian forces have clearly decided to close the encirclement from both the west and the east. And judging by the drone footage, this advance is going quite successfully. It is highly likely that the pocket will be sealed within the next few days. Currently, the distance between the forward Russian positions in Zarya and Romanivka is just over 3 kilometers, a negligible range for FPV drones, artillery, mortars, and reconnaissance and sabotage groups. This gap is now narrowing daily. Based on the footage, it's highly likely that by tonight or within the next 48 hours, remaining Ukrainian units located south of the Zarya-Romanivka line will begin retreating northward through fields and forest strips toward Oleksandr Kalinova. We're not updating the full map yet, as Ukrainian forces still hold some positions near Hnativka and Staromykolaivka. However, based on the Russian army's forward positions, we must acknowledge the collapse is imminent. It's just a matter of days, maybe hours, before the pocket is eliminated. Ukrainian forces will likely retreat overnight. If not, they risk being encircled. There are also reports of Russian advances toward the southwestern part of Yablunivka. Today, new drone footage emerged. In these frames, we can see Russian forces striking Ukrainian positions in the forest lines, followed by a ground assault. In one clip, a Russian soldier throws an anti-tank mine into a UAF position. As a result of this assault, all the forest belts to the south were abandoned. So let's once again look at how the map changed over the past day. This is what the map looked like at the end of May 24, 2025. By May 25th, we see significant updates. New footage shows drone strikes on forest belts and FAB bomb strikes on routes toward Oleksandr Kalinova and Yablunivka. The pace of Russian advances is only accelerating, and in the coming days, all forested areas south of these towns will likely be marked as Russian-controlled. Afterward, the fighting will shift to the railway and the Kryvyi Torets River, located between Toretsk, Katerinivka, Klebanbyk, and the Klebanbyk Reservoir, specifically in the settlements of Shevchenko, Shcherbinivka, and Novospaska. Next, we move to the N32 highway, where Russian forces are gradually expanding their bridgehead, preparing for an offensive toward Popov Ya and Poltavka. The map here has also been updated today based on Ukrainian drone footage. Let's take a look. In these clips, we see Russian vehicles advancing toward Popov Ya. Some viewers mistook these clips for a full-fledged armored assault. However, in my opinion, this was actually a kamikaze mission, not human, but a vehicle packed with explosives intended to hit UAF positions. However, the vehicle was destroyed by FPV drones before reaching its target. You don't see solo vehicles like this unless they're rigged to blow. Likely it was aiming for this or that stronghold to detonate bunkers and clear the way for an assault. It probably came from the eastern tree line, not from the south, as there's an anti-tank ditch there. In any case, it's clear that Russian units are gradually preparing the ground for a further offensive toward Popov Ya, a small but strategically important village that could serve as a staging area for further advances north, northwest, and northeast. Now we move toward the village of Mykolaivka. There are also new reports and updates from the area around Malinivka. Some neutral mapmakers confirm full Russian control over Malinivka and that fighting has begun for the village of Mern. Next, we move to Pokrovsk, currently quiet, with no new reports. After that, we move on to the Novopavlivka direction. Here, fighting continues for Muravka, Nova Mykolaivka, and the village of Horokov. New footage shows Russian drones identifying and destroying Ukrainian strongpoints and vehicles moving between directions, possibly for evacuation or ammo delivery. All of this is in preparation for a ground assault. Further south, fighting continues to expand the zone of control around Bohatyr and Otradne. Interestingly, today, some Ukrainian mapping services published updated maps and claimed that Russia does not control Bohatyr, Otradne, or Constantinople. According to them, most of these settlements and forest strips remain under UAF control, despite the numerous videos showing Russian flags raised there. In any case, we'll continue monitoring how the situation evolves. But it's becoming clearer and more obvious that the fighting is now shifting toward Alexeyevka, the last major settlement in this section. After that comes Komar, and then only Novopavlivka remains. Capturing Novopavlivka would allow Russian forces to start building up reserves and resources inside Dnipropetrovsk region. And that's all for today, friends. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and all the best to you.